All right. Well, welcome everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today for your next mission, Unspoken Truth. Today, we're going to be talking about career transitions at Northrop Grumman and what they really look like beyond the job description. You'll hear about the challenges, the opportunities, and some of the things that people don't always say out loud. So if you happen to be thinking about a new role, maybe building new skills or exploring a different path, this session is here to give you practical insight and help you move forward with confidence. So I'm really excited to introduce our speakers today. We have Ish Escobar, Enterprise Military Recruiting Lead at Northrop Grumman and Program Lead for Operation Impact. He brings extensive leadership experience from his time as a U.S. Army infantryman, including 2 combat tours, and leads efforts to support wounded warriors through career transition and inclusive hiring initiatives. We also have Brian Bilski, Senior Talent Acquisition Business Partner at Northrop Grumman and a retired U.S. Marine Corps officer. He brings over 20 years of military experience and deep expertise in supporting transitioning service member, including serving as Director of Transition for the Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Regiment and contributing to the Department of Defense SkillBridge program. So together, they'll share insights and real-world advice to help you prepare for and succeed in your next mission. So I do want to let you know the session will be recorded and we will be sharing it with everybody later this afternoon. So at this time, I will go ahead and hand it over to Brian and Ish.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Ish Escobar, Enterprise Military Recruiting Lead for Northrop Grumman. I report to the corporate office, which is located in Falls Church, Virginia, and specifically into talent acquisition. I've been with Northrop Grumman since 2008. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but I've been around for quite some time at Northrop Grumman. And it's an amazing company to work for. And hopefully after today, you will agree with me. As mentioned, my good pal, Brian Bilski, is also with me. I'll let him introduce himself here in a minute. But also we have Matt Gaskin, who is also part of our AS sector. And he'll be interacting with you, hopefully in the chats as you all have questions or comments. He will be in there, hopefully answering some of those questions for you. In addition to that, here in a second, I'm going to drop a link, and this link will take you into an event that we have created internally for you all. And this gives you an opportunity to register, upload your resume, and then, of course, connect with us to this particular link. So I highly encourage you, if Northrop Grumman is perhaps an employer of choice or something you're thinking about, I encourage you to once I drop the link, I'll drop it multiple times during the presentation because I'm sure it'll get lost with all the questions and comments. But nevertheless, I encourage you at some point, click on that link, register, upload your resume, and connect with us to that link. So over to you, Brian, to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, Ish. And hey, want to welcome everybody to this. Hopefully we can share some information about some things that, you don't learn until you get inside the company, and some things that'll help you, promote yourself and your career once you're inside, and also prior to that also. But, I haven't been here as long as Ish. I've only been with Northrop Grumman for going on 8 years. But prior to that, with the military, doing a lot of different things. But as mentioned, how I got into this and where my passion comes from is I used to be in charge of transitioning our severely wounded, ill, and injured for the Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Regiment, which I was telling earlier, Cassandra and Linda, we held the first boots to business with IVMF there at Camp Lejeune. But anyways, I used to sit kneecap to kneecap with everyone, help trying to figure out what their next journey is, their transition, and knowing, sitting on that side of the fence, some of the things I didn't learn until I got into the business or into Northrop Grumman, and now learning and seeing it from both sides. Hopefully we can share some of these things today with you that, I always say there's no silver bullets out there. There's only things that you can do to set yourself up for success. and give yourself the best shot at those opportunities. So with that being said, I'll set Matt. We do have Matt Gaskin here, who is part of our military team. So we got a couple minutes, Matt. He went to Florida State, so he doesn't have a lot to say. Go
Thanks,
ahead, Matt.
Brian. Yeah, my name is Matt Gaskin. I also work on the military team. I've been working with Northrop Grumman for about 9 years altogether. I've probably been doing DoD recruiting for the past 12 years. And I help support Brian with all the skill bridge programs for our sector. So happy to help. Got any questions, please just let me know.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Matt. And again, we'll hear from Brian here in a few slides. And of course, as I mentioned, Matt will be available in the chat. So feel free to interact with him. So super excited to be with you all today. We have a ton of information we want to cover, and I'm sure you're all eager and ready to hear what we need to say. But let's quickly start with who we are as a company. I know when I was in the military, I knew exactly who Northrop Grumman was from a product perspective. One of the gadgets we had, I guess, for lack of better terms, within our Stryker vehicle was what's called an FBCV2, which is a very fancy Blue Force tracker, fancy GPS that we used not only in peacetime, but certainly during combat. But I do recall that when you would turn this particular product, when you would turn it on, the first thing you would see was a Northrop Grumman logo. So I knew exactly, again, from a product perspective, who Northrop Grumman was, but from a company perspective of where they were, what types of opportunities they had, and where, and more importantly, where do I fit in within Northrop Grumman? That was a complete mystery to me. So I want to provide you just some insight today. That way, again, as you're looking at Northrop Grumman or a company like Northrop Grumman, again, you have at least some perspective of what companies like Northrop Grumman do, where they're located, and those types of things. So now on this slide here, I'm just going to provide you a very quick overview of our company. Okay, and Northrop Grumman, it goes without saying, is a leading global aerospace and defense technology company. And we offer just an extraordinary portfolio of capabilities, many technologies, and these technologies enable us to deliver innovative systems and solutions for applications, and these things range from air, cyber, land, sea, and space. Now, our employees define what's possible every single day, and that is our model, define possible, okay? And nearly 20% of them are veterans. Okay, so if you decide at some point, if you are a veteran, decide to join Northrop Grumman, you're not going to be, the weird one in the corner. You're going to be one of many employees at Northrop Grumman that encompass our veteran community. Okay, now starting at the bottom left, you'll see we have 4 operating sectors and a corporate office. The corporate office is where I report out of, and that's in Falls Church, Virginia. Now, as far as the corporate office, the main purpose we're not very fancy here. Our main purpose is to offer the support for all of the business sectors. So think of it much like a headquarters of a military organization, right? Not a lot of exciting things are happening there, but certainly from an operational standpoint, right, it's absolutely necessary. But then we start getting into the sectors, and this is where all the exciting things are happening within our company. For instance, as you look at aeronautic systems, they design and produce advanced military aircraft. And this includes a new B-21 Raider, the F-35, Global Hawk, and they provide a ton of components for aircraft like the F/A-18 Hornet. And then, of course, many years ago, perhaps it was all over the news. You saw the James Webb Space Telescope that was sent into outer space to really give us a really deep look into deep space. They were part of that build and the launch. So super exciting, the things that are going on in aeronautic systems. Then we look at defense systems, and they deliver a full spectrum of defense capabilities for both civil and military programs. And their big focus is on strategic and tactical missile systems and advanced munitions. Now, as we look at mission systems, they produce defense capabilities, everything from radars to sensors. And these go into aircraft such as the F-16, the F-22. And they put a very, very strong emphasis on cybersecurity. Okay, so if cybersecurity is something that perhaps is within your background, within your scope of work, definitely mission systems is one of the sectors that I would be looking into as well. Now, as we look at the space systems and exactly what it sounds, space systems, they provide capabilities. Let me go back one slide. Sorry about that. They provide capabilities, end-to-end space and launch solutions for national security and commercial clients. And this includes the Cygnus spacecraft, and then, of course, some of the upgrades for launch vehicles along with orbit satellite service. Okay, now, if you look at the bottom right there, you'll see our values. Now, for those of you who served, and I believe most of you here served, you'll notice that our values really tie into the values that you should be familiarized with, especially in the military, right? Those things of doing the right thing, integrity, shared success, working as a team to accomplish the mission. We do what we promise, committing to delivering quality outcomes. We pioneer. So all these different things that really, as a veteran, I know when I was looking at Northrop Grumman as an employer of choice, certainly these were things that really spoke to me, especially coming out of the Army, obviously, and the values that we held within the Army. These things really spoke to me and resonated with me. So hopefully they resonate with you as well. Now, as we look at the very, very top right corner there, you'll see a map there, and you notice that there's a lot of different blue dots and then a yellow star. Now, the yellow star represents our corporate office, and again, that's headquartered in Falls Church, Virginia. Those of you who are not familiar with the Northern Virginia area, we're about 20 miles, maybe 15 miles right outside of Washington, D.C. However, all the remaining blue dots, these are major facilities, okay, with 50 plus employees within our company. However, we are located in all 50 states. Okay, so obviously the blue dots, again, those represent major facilities. So as you're looking at Northrop Grumman and you're thinking, okay, maybe I want to go to, I'll just choose Idaho as an example, right? As you can see here, there's not a blue dot there. So just things to think about. And some of these things will be covered by Brian here in a second as well. But again, as you're looking at Northrop Grumman or an employer, name it, whoever, those are things to consider, obviously, right? Where are they located? Where is the work located, et cetera? But again, all 50 states. And then, of course, we do have an international footprint. We are located in 35 countries as well. So if overseas is something that you are interested in, again, there's opportunities as well overseas. Now, let's dive into the material here. And we're going to start with something that I know when I was leaving the military back in 2008, as I was being medically discharged, this was something that as people were mentioning it, I would, to be honest with you, would roll my eyes a little bit because I'm like, what do you mean I have to network? What do you mean I have to do all this groundwork to try to find, a suitable job? I'm a veteran. That was sort of my mindset. I'm a veteran. Everyone should be hiring me. And the reality is, yes, I'm a veteran. Yes. However, there was many other veterans coming out, especially during that time, many Staff Sergeant Escobars coming out of the military with either injuries or just leaving the military, as a whole, PCS or ETSing out of the military, et cetera. So this is something that we really, really want to put a little bit of emphasis today, because if you feel that networking is something that you can downplay, or perhaps something that you don't want to put too much time or effort into, I hope that after this slide, I change your mind a little bit. Okay, now, as we look at networking, think of it as building those relationships, right? And how crucial it is to be successful in the workplace. And then, of course, as you are searching for your next role, okay? As you effectively network, this will help you not only cultivate quality relationships, which hopefully at some point may lead into promotions, interview opportunities, employment, et cetera, but also it'll help you really be comfortable in learning about these networking strategies and techniques that really make this a really effective way of finding your next career. Now, you see here the numbers. 70% of all jobs are not published on publicly available job search sites. And these are true numbers here. These are not numbers that, were made up. These are true numbers. So a lot of times you'll find that folks get into that, quote unquote dream job or that next career based on, like it says up there, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's that connection that they made, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through a career fair, a conference, a mutual battle buddy from the military, all these different ways of really being able to effectively be able to engage or have some insight on whatever company you are interested in, particularly when it comes to roles. We see here that 50 to 80% of those jobs are filled through networking. If those numbers don't like open your eyes a little bit after, I don't know what to tell you at this point on the importance of really having an effective network and an effective strategy and how you're networking or how you're opening up your eyes to engage and with either recruiters or again those folks who are inside already within those companies. Now, one of the things that is very common now, I mean, social media, right? I'm sure we all have, or most folks have an account of sorts, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, etc. But LinkedIn is that professional network, right? It's social media, obviously, but it's a professional network, or at least that's the intent. So, how do you connect with someone on LinkedIn? Let me tell you the one way you don't want to connect with someone on LinkedIn, because this happens more often than not. A lot of folks will find me, I'll use myself as an example, will find me and, oh, you work for Northrop Grumman, and then they send me just their entire life story and why they're a good fit for Northrop Grumman. And, or much worse, I was an 11 Bravo infantryman in the Army. What can I do for Northrop Grumman? Okay. The hardest job to fill is exactly, I can do anything, I can go anywhere. That is the absolute hardest job to fill at Northrop Grumman. But if you look at our example here, a great way to connect with whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a manager at Northrop Grumman, or someone who just happens to work at Northrop Grumman that you found on LinkedIn or someone told you to connect with. This is a good example here of sort of the etiquette of connecting with someone on LinkedIn. You see here, very simple. Hello, I'm Joe Smith, transitioning from the Navy after 10 years. Logistics officer, I have an active clearance. I'm interested in these opportunities at Northrop Grumman at this particular location. I have applied for 3 positions that I felt, were a best fit for my skills and experience. And then you see the requisition numbers there. Now, I'll get to that here in a second. And then please let me know if you have any questions. Very respectfully, Joe Smith. So we see here, this took me, and of course I summarized it, but it literally took me 35 seconds to read this thing. But if we focus more on the information that was provided versus how long it took me to read this thing, we notice a few things. Number 1, name, obviously. Number 2, veteran, how many years they've served. Number 3, what did they do within the Navy? The fact that they have an active security clearance, and I'll put a star next to that because, again, we're a defense contractor. Granted, not all opportunities at Northrop Grumman require security clearance. That's a given. However, many opportunities at Northrop Grumman require a security clearance, so that is a huge plus. So right off the bat, you're giving me half the information that I would ask you. You just simply said, hey, I can go anywhere and I can do anything. And then we move into, I've applied to 3 positions. And we hear this a lot. Brian and Matt, I'm sure, would agree. Hey, I've applied to 15 jobs at Northrop Grumman. Great, which ones? And here this individual goes above and beyond and says, hey, not only did I apply, but I feel that these positions really fit my skills and experience within the Navy, right? And then they give us gold here, which is the requisition numbers, right? So I know for you, this may look like a letter followed by numbers, and what does it mean? For us internally, this is a number that we would need in order to search for that position and then begin to search where you are in the application process. So in other words, what you're giving me is a ton of information up front that I don't have to go back and forth with you anymore. So in other words, we can get on with what we need to do much faster. Okay, so again, is this the only way to connect? Absolutely not. But again, this is just an example and sort of the etiquette that goes along with LinkedIn. And again, I wanted to put a little bit of emphasis on this because on average, and this is true honesty here, on average, I get about 25 messages a day on LinkedIn. And I would say about 22 of those are life stories. And I get it. We all have experiences. We all have, some of us, have have had trouble transitioning out of the military or even trouble within the military. I mean, all these different things, right? Reasons why they're getting out, staying in, et cetera. But however, in the essence of time, think of it. You're one of 25 on a daily basis. I mean, think of that as you're writing your message. Where do you want to maximize your time? How do you want to connect with that recruiter? What information do you want to give that recruiter or that individual right up front so they can hit the ground running? If you feel like, hey, I just want to tell you my entire life story, great, I'll listen to you. But is that going to help you and I figure out where you fit within Northrop Grumman? Probably not. Now, I want to put and I'll end it with this. I want to put another star next to I feel best fit my skills and experience. That I feel best fit my skills and experience. Okay, this can be translated in many, many different ways. Okay, my advice, and I'm sure Brian will touch on this. My advice is, as you are looking at Northrop Grumman, and Brian will cover this as well. Different ways, different tactics and ways to figure out what roles match your skill set and what things are available that can really help you figure out where you fit in with Northrop Grumman, because a lot of times that is the hardest question to answer. Again, I'll use myself, infantryman. I know exactly, in my opinion, the best job in the military, the best job in the Army. What does that mean for Northrop Grumman? Where do I fit in? Okay, so here's the good news. There's a lot of amazing tools that are available now within our career website that will really help you answer 9 of the 10 questions that you may have pertaining to where do I fit within Northrop Grumman. However, as you begin, and again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but as you begin that process, I always encourage you, read the requisition. Make sure you understand what the position entails. Make sure you understand what the roles and responsibilities. What are the basic qualifications of this role? Do I meet those basic qualifications? Okay. If there's other qualifications or preferred qualifications that are embedded within the requisition, okay, do I have any of those that'll really give me a leg up from the next individual who's also applying for this role? So I just wanted to put a little asterisk on that in case, again, you're downplaying some of those things, because we see this a lot. Folks apply to 100 jobs and then they're wondering, why isn't anyone calling me? Because they're not tailoring their resume, or they're just simply like shooting in the dark. Like I've always said, you may hit your target, but who knows? You're much better off really understanding what you're applying to, understanding where you fit in within that role, and as you engage with recruiters, now you know with a certainty these positions that I've applied for, I know I meet the qualifications and I have what it takes to do that particular job within Northrop Grumman. Okay, again, I'll be on the background now. I'm going to hand it over to Brian, who will take over the remainder of this presentation. Again, I'll drop the link for you to connect with us here at Northrop Grumman. And again, myself and Matt will be in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to connect with us. So over to you, Brian.
Awesome, Ish. Great job. Great job. And, I could not stress that enough or foot stomp that enough. And the reason, and we're going to have another call. If you guys are interested, I asked Matt, we got a virtual information session later today that will go into some of the tools that Ish was talking about and some more about Northrop Grumman. But, I'm going to talk about number one here, but I'm going to tie it in to networking. Okay. So, you look at Northrop Grumman, we're going to give a, full on brief about our website and applying and levels and all that in our brief later today, which I highly, would suggest if you guys have time to do it, to participate, because we'll get more into depth. But as Ish was saying, we often, Matt and I, we all get, those many LinkedIn messages, and they all, and I get it, they say, hey, can you get 10, 15, 20 minutes to talk? But as Ish was saying, we get 25, 30 messages a day. If I spent 10, 15 minutes with all the people that messaged me, we would not have time to do our daily jobs. So you keep it short, simple, to the point, so I can look you up in the system with that requisition number. And here's the key, is because when I look you up, it's about getting your resume to that recruiter on top of the pile. So when a recruiter opens up a position, matter of fact, I just found this one recruiter who opened the position up 6 days ago. And I was blown away. Somebody said, "Hey, I applied to this position, Brian. Can you take a look?" This position opened 6 days ago and had over 1,000 people on it. 1,005. I was like blown away. But anyways, the reason why you want to network like that and reach out to us and say, give us that requisition number is because when I read that, and if we're going to talk about tailoring the resume and your resume, you're qualified and everything's good, I'm going to shoot your information to that recruiter. And now at least you're going to get seen, right? At least that, out of professional etiquette, that recruiter is going to say, okay, Brian, let me take a look at this. Because what happens is when a recruiter opens up his requisition, he starts at the top and he starts reading, let's say 100 people applied. And we got to get about maybe 5 good qualified candidates that a hiring manager, maybe 10, to interview for one position. So if I'm reading down with number 1 and I get down to number 40 and I found my top, I found qualified good candidates to move over to manager review, guess what happens to 41 to 100? They don't even get reviewed, right? So that's why networking is important, because you want to make sure you're in that 1 to 40 and get at least reviewed. Doesn't mean you're going to be sent over, but at least get reviewed, and you're not in that 41 to 100 that gets the thanks for applying. So that's why networking is so important. And and again, we can get right to it and help you out as fast as we can. Now, in addition to networking, the next biggest thing is that resume. Tailoring that resume is so key, because what happens is that hiring manager writes that resume, or writes the job requisition. So that's the person we as a recruiter are trying to find candidates based on his requirements. So if you're writing a resume that's not tailored to that job description, I can't forward you. I can't send you forward if you don't meet the experience. And there's a thing called basic qualifications. If you don't meet all those, we're not able to forward you to the hiring manager. Okay. So, again, join us for our next, our information session where we'll talk more about tailoring the resumes. But literally, folks, you see on the left, I know it's hard to read, but that's a job description. What I do is I literally take that job description, I highlight all the keywords and all the experiences that I have, and then I take it and I transfer it over into my resume. Again, I don't do word for word, but I'm basically wordsmithing the same words and phrases that are in that job description into my resume. Now, as a recruiter, as I read that, I'm going to see all these experiences, all these keywords, and guess what? Now my head's going like ding, 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 ding. This guy is like, or this candidate right here is a winner, right? He meets all the requirements, and I want to get him over to the manager. Okay. So tailoring the resume and networking, if those are the two, it takes time, right? I used to tell my Marines, finding a job is your job. When you're in transition, that is, just like you put 8 hours, 10 hours, in the Navy, they put in 4 hours, but a day to get over, right? Sorry, we love the Navy. But I'm just saying, guys, put as much effort, time into your resume and job description and job search as you do to your, commitment to your regular duties in the military. So anyways, hiring decisions are based on alignment of skills and experience. And again, tailor that resume. Now, I told you that you must meet all the basic qualifications. Now, just because you're qualified for the position doesn't mean that you're going to get that position. So what it means is at least you're qualified. So then we move the most qualified to the hiring manager review, who then will review those resumes. So, and then he will select the most qualified out of those, right? So again, just because, if you read that requisition and you're like, man, these BQs, I meet everything, I'm a winner. Yes, you're qualified. But again, we're going to be hiring the most qualified. So there's going to be a lot of qualified people. So the better you can, beef up that resume, tailor it, the better your chances are going to be. Okay. True value. We're going to talk about this, but when you write your resume, we like it chronological so that we can count how many years that you have in experience and to the actual position that you're applying to. I'll have senior folks who said, I spent 20 years in the military and they applied to a position that requires 8 years. And they're like, wait, I'm way overqualified. I'm way overqualified. But we're only going to count that experience that relates directly to that position. I'll take myself as an example. I was a pilot for 12 years, right? So I was a pilot for first 12 years in my Marine Corps. And then after that, I got into some other things. And again, eventually to Wounded Warrior, right? And then into semi-recruiting. So when I applied to be a recruiter, they were not going to count my 12 years experience as a pilot because, as cool as being a pilot is, it has nothing to do with recruiting, right? So they only counted like about that 6 years I was with Wounded Warrior Regiment, leading transition and, supporting, recruiting efforts with other companies as my experience towards being a recruiter. So just remember that just because you've got 20 years, 10, 15 years, especially if you're project management, you're going for a manager role, leading others, and you're a senior staff NCO, let's say you got out as a gunnery sergeant after 12 years, let's be honest, probably your time between E1 and E3 is not going to count as a manager role, right? Because you're not really leading folks typically until about the E4 range. And that's typically where we'll start maybe counting some management and supervisory years. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Salary negotiations, right? Hey, let's jump ahead a little bit. You got the interview, you got selected. Now we're going over the offer. Salary negotiations. I'm actually going through this right now with a Air Force public affairs officer who's got selected for a manager 2 role. And, as I'm his advocate, because that recruiter is your advocate when you do salary negotiations. You can always, whenever you, get a job offer, it's okay to say, hey, I want to, ask for more. I always say it, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? You can always ask for more. And if they say no, well, it is what it is. But there's potentially some meat on the bone that you can get a little bit more. But when you do it, justify that request. Don't say, hey, just because, I'm the God's gift to aviation or I'm God's gift to logistics, I deserve it. You got to really dig into that job requisition and go into why you deserve more years. You meet the preferred qualifications. You got specialization and maybe a product that Northrop Grumman is providing to the customer, but definitely go in there and justify, which this young man did for me as that PAO. And then, but also things to consider. I always say is, believe it or not, we do not pay the most money, Northrop Grumman. There's other companies that I see people get offers for, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But the one thing that I think that Northrop Grumman provides is the benefits, the mission, and the opportunity to grow your career, right? We say you join Northrop Grumman, you could have a 20, 30-year career at Northrop Grumman. We even kid around and say your kids could have careers at Northrop Grumman. So those are some things to take into consideration with the salary. But going back to the salary specifically, just remember the recruiter is there to help you get as much as you can because he's going to go back or she's going to go back to that hiring manager with your request. And at the end of the day, we're kind of like trying to advocate for you to get as much money because as a recruiter, it's in my best interest that we, get that over the hump, get the offer completed, and that I can move on to the next position. So just keep that in mind. So don't fight with the recruiter, right? Because if you fight with a recruiter, then a recruiter is going to say, well, forget this, right? Human nature. But just remember, they're doing their best and advocating for you within that negotiating frame with whether it's HR or with the hiring manager. Because, we built that relationship typically we built that relationship with you, right? And we want to see you be successful. Other things to consider, right? Competition and partners. Hey, trying to get into Northrop Grumman, sometimes Northrop Grumman's not your first career or your first company. Actually, I worked for 2 other companies prior to joining Northrop Grumman. And again, I got both those through networking, just another knock on networking, but competitors and partners. So oftentimes, like if you work with say a Lockheed Martin, a Raytheon, or any of those other companies, we see those folks and we hire a lot of folks from them. So I always say it's like, hey, same thing. If you can get in with Northrop Grumman, but your goal is to get with Lockheed Martin in Dallas because love the Cowboys so much, you might want to consider coming in with Northrop Grumman in Virginia or Florida or something like that, right? Because we do hire a lot from other companies. Third party companies. A lot of times we do work with contracting companies. I think last time there was Matt was a contractor and before he got hired on a Northrop Grumman. So, sometimes if you're working with, you can't get in a Northrop Grumman, but there's a contractor role, part-time or, consider that because a lot of times you'll come in, it's a people business. They see what a great job you're doing and they would love, once that contract's done, usually about 6 months, then Northrop Grumman has the opportunity to hire you full time. So think about that. If you're, in that position, you're like, nope, I want to do full time with a company. But think about if they have a contract with a company, that's one way of getting your foot in the door. And then internal mobility and hiring. I wouldn't say this about any company or every company, but I know I heard it in TAP, right? Know your worth. And I agree with that. Know what you're worth, right? But also with that being said, you got to manage your expectations sometimes. And if the company is a good company, where I said earlier, you have a mission, they have benefits and opportunities to grow, then, it's about getting your foot in the door. I would say within Northrop Grumman and probably other companies like us, I would say about 50%, a lot of our positions are filled internally. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Because we want internal mobility for career growth and opportunities for you to grow. So if you can get, your foot in the door as maybe one level less than, what you would like or expect to be in, but that yours are going to be opportunities to grow and expand your career or move in different locations. That's one thing I would consider when thinking about a company and a position that you're going to take. So any questions on that? I think those are some things that, are just, get your foot in the door, again, tailoring that resume, negotiations, a lot of good stuff. All right, next. Okay, so here's some unspoken truth. Once your foot in the door, right? This is, coming from the military, spending 20 years in the military, we do things different on the civilian side. Okay, you would be amazed. A funny story is my boss was an Army Ranger, and when Army and Marines get together, we have some good fun, right? And respectful that we thought was, but then amongst our peers, they actually thought he was being disrespectful to me. So when you get into civilian side, just be aware of your surroundings, what we used to say and how we used to talk to each other in the military. Sometimes others may perceive it as being, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say hostile, but maybe not as kind. So anyways, with that being said, knowledge and leveraging your unique skills and knowledge, right? I know when I was in the military, we used to keep our mouths shut unless we were called on or we had something to say. I know because they wanted to keep the meetings move along. But always be able to go to that meetings. If you're in meetings, working on a team, providing tactful input to those needs in the meetings and apply your knowledge strategically. So don't just speak to speak and dragging things on. But if you can bring, your subject matter expertise to a situation and do it tactfully with your peers, right? And again, you got to be doing it tactfully, even more tactfully than we did in the military. You're definitely going to be recognized by your managers and others as a leader within that team. So very important. And again, mastering the art of effective communications and conflict resolutions. And again, assuming, you go into these meetings, sometimes you're in meetings, you're constantly changing teams. You may not know somebody, it's not like we do it in the military where we're working training up with folks and you're working with those folks for a long time. You may be changing teams every month, working on a new project. So assume good intent from all in parties and active listening. So just making sure that you're listening to others, giving others time to speak, and then be able to, again, provide impactful knowledge, and that will actually go a long way. This is the next one. It's the biggest one for me. Is take control of your compensation and career trajectory. In the military, you're kind of like, hey, I know if I do a good job, I put so many years in, I'm going to get promoted. And, I don't have to worry about salary because salary is already, built into the, cake, right? I'm going to get how many years, my rank, how many years, I'm going to get those automatic. That's not how it works on the civilian side. So on the civilian side, it's about, we have monthly one-on-ones with our managers. We have quarterly connections where we talk about our careers. We talk about, what our trajectory is, what kind of roles are we looking for next, career growth. So if you don't speak up or if you don't, convey to your manager what your career growths are, and then asking, hey, once you get in and your, expectations for salaries and asking for raises, honestly, I'm I'm one who just like I'm happy to be here, right? But I find out that if you don't take care of that and ask for it, you won't get it. I won't say you won't get it, but you may not get as much. All right. So be an advocate for yourself because nobody else is going to take care of yourself better than you. Okay. Again, when you ask for money, again, do it tactfully, show the projects you're working on, the leadership that you're doing, things that you're doing to, advance the team. But again, take that into consideration and don't wait for somebody else to take care of your career. Okay. Mentors. Okay. Mentors, I'll be the first to admit, I was like, why do I need a mentor? I'm pretty smart. I know where I want to go. I know what I want to do. But I tell you what, those I have seen on the civilian side, those who have taken mentors have gone further than those who have not. And the reason is, who are your mentors, right? Typically your mentors are not somebody side to side. Typically the mentors are somebody who's a manager or a director, not in direct chain of command, but outside, within another business or something within Northrop Grumman. But guess what that mentor is? That mentor's your network. So think about it that way. That mentor is now, one, they know the insides of the company. They know other directors. They know other managers, and if things are going well, they're going to speak highly on your behalf. So I've seen it, on many occasions with folks who have had mentors within the company get promoted faster than those who don't. Okay. So go out of your way, get a mentor. And, I know a lot of us in the military, it's uncomfortable for me, but it's one of those things that you got to get over if you want to see that career go further. And again, opportunities to network, feedback, exposure. Exposure is so important. Again, it just goes back to that first one. Get exposure. If there's opportunities to participate in projects, opportunities to volunteer for other organizations, definitely do it. And that's going to definitely get your career going in the right direction. All right. I got a Matt Gaskin here. Matt's been around for a while. Matt, do you have anything to add to the last couple slides?
No, I got a couple things. I mean, when you're talking about that bottom half there, taking control of your career and external mentors and internal mentors, that really is a big thing. I will admit, I definitely waffled on that when I first joined the organization. I had my head down, I was in my work, and I was not doing a lot of that internal networking, getting mentors, that kind of thing. I had this very similar mindset of do your job well, and then those things will come. But a lot of it on the professional and corporate side of the world is talking to folks, getting your name out there. Those are really how you progress through different roles and different opportunities and learn about different things. So that's one of the major things that I slowly and learned on to kind of do. That stuff has really been a big jump. I noticed the difference when I started doing those types of things. And going back to the first slide we were talking about, I don't know, we might be going through this later, but the basic qualifications part, that is major. One of the things that is pretty much beat into recruiters is compliance, 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 compliance. So we have to make sure that you meet all those basic qualifications We have to be able to see on the resume. We have to be able to prove it on the resume. So if you don't have all on there, we are not legally allowed to pass you through. So that's why we get a lot of folks who are applying to things, and they may have the background, they may have the experience, but it's not on the resume. I can't guess, I can't infer, I can't suggest that you have these, that we have to be able to see it. So that's one of the main things. If you are applying to roles and you keep seeing those rejections, make sure that you're getting those basic qualifications, because we're not allowed to pass you forward until we can justify every single one of them. And I think that's my soapbox. So,
All right, good to go. Good to go. Awesome. Next slide, Dish. I'll finish up this and we'll have some time for questions if there's any out there. So again, these are unspoken truths that I see, from being inside the company for the last 8 years and others. So work-life balance. Okay. In the military, we work till the mission's done, right? And same thing in the civilian side, but they do expect you to have some work-life balance. And fortunately, they allow us to take time off to go take care of the family, manage, but you got to manage your workload and prioritize your tasks. So that means working well with others, communicating well with your managers and other colleagues. But again, balance loyalty to yourself with your company demands. Don't kill yourself. I know many of us in the military would work those long hours, weekends, whatever it took, but that's not the expectation on the civilian side. Okay. Working smarter, not harder, process improvement with experience. When you come in any role at Northrop Grumman, or I would say with any company, you're going to be slow at first, but as you work through it, just like in the military, you're going to figure out ways to do things, process improvement, get your work done faster, and then also ask for help. In the military, a lot of times if we ask for help, sometimes it's kind of like a sign or a signal of weakness. But I know on the civilian side, as I work here, everybody's willing to help. Everybody wants to help. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. And especially when you're new. And I tell people this all the time because I was afraid to ask for, especially in the virtual side, right? When you don't know people, a lot of times, except for seeing their faces on a screen, it's hard to ask for help. And so I find that I used to spend hours trying to figure something out that if I would just ask somebody, I probably could have got it done in 10 minutes, right? So that's what whenever I meet somebody new on a team, somebody I can help with, I impress upon them. If there's anything, don't spend an hour looking for something, give me a call, and then we can probably figure it out in a couple of minutes. So always ask for help. And the biggest thing is company politics, right? There's always politics wherever you go, whether it's in the military, whether it's in the civilian side. I would say it's probably more so on the civilian side from what I've experienced being here. So understanding that landscape, observing hierarchy and understanding who the key players and informal networks are. Okay. Knowing who's, I hate to say it, movers and shakers, right? We have different managers, we have different directors, understanding, who are the ones that can help your career in the right direction. And, I wouldn't say aligning, but, going to them, talking with them, maybe even asking them to be your mentor, right? And so understanding that and then networking across departments and levels. I mean, Ish is from the corporate enterprise, and I'm in aeronautics along with Matt, but we work across all our sectors. And so getting your name out, across the sectors, across the enterprise, and so that you're a team player and that will assist you. And then again, I said earlier, participating in projects, don't be that the fly on the wall, right? Get your name out there, get seen, and ask for extra projects, because I know when it comes to promotion, when it comes to being seen, I know my director. I'm kind of a quiet person, believe it or not, but I've seen, those folks who are out there, Matt, truly, I'm pretty reserved. But I give people props, right? People who are out there doing that, being seen, and I see those folks getting promoted as they should. But so if you want to impress that career, those are some things that are different from the military side to the civilian side that, you would, help yourself in your career. And then again, Career pivot. We talked about some folks who are coming out of the military want to do a career pivot. The biggest to me is expectation management, right? So recently we just had this Marine pilot. He was a Cobra guy. He retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years. And before he joined the Marine Corps, he graduated with a degree in software engineering. So he wanted to get back into software engineering again, but he knew he was doing a whole 180 career pivot, right? So he went through our software training and he got hired in like at a level 2, which is kind of like just, college grad, maybe just above college grad. But even he said, he goes, I get it. I haven't done software engineering for 20 years. So I got to start, where my skills and experience put me. So again, if you're able to understand, I said, remember, we hire based on how many years of experience you have doing that certain position. And a lot of things that we do cross deck or cross level to other careers. But again, it's that career expectation that, yeah, you might have spent 20 years in the military, but like me, I started out as a level 2 recruiter, right? Because I knew I wasn't be hired as a pilot. So if you do a career, 180, just that expectation that you're going to start probably at the lower levels based on your new career and new experience, I guess you could say. And then training education. Training education is continuous. The great thing about Northrop Grumman, we give 10, 15, $1,000 a year towards training and education. So again, opportunities to get in, adventure. Matt got his master's through Northrop Grumman. And so, there's opportunities always to get that training education to help advance to your next career. I kind of went fast at the end because I wanted to leave some opportunities. If there's any questions out there, I'll open it up.
Thanks so much, Brian, Matt, and Itch. Great insights. So I think we just have a question here from AJ. So AJ asks, for those now retired military, how can we meet Northrop Grumman's employees in person to make that personal connection versus relying solely on that paper resume?
Yeah, that's a great. So prior to COVID, we used to have meetups all the time. So go to our events page. We're always going to show, I think, where it goes back to networking, whether it's Northrop Grumman or any other company, if they're having an in-person meetup or in-person networking event, attend. I can't tell you how many times managers would come back to us and say, hey, I met this gentleman, here's his resume, take a look at him, which to me means wink, wink. I'd like to interview this guy, right? So how can you do it at Northrop Grumman? We have an events page, and at various locations, we'll have meetups at some of our locations, and or we do go out and do events in person. So look for those events. And again, look for other companies that are doing the same thing. But I do, what else? When I got back out of the Marine Corps, I volunteered for the United Way. And I think volunteering is huge because when I was there, I was working with directors and, managers and everything at Lockheed Martin in Orlando. And I know one of the girls there got a position with Lockheed Martin. So think about volunteering for organizations because a lot of the folks that volunteered at United Way had a lot of great connections. So build that network.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Actually, we'll take it from Heather. So Heather asks, do you feel that military members have an advantage over military spouses, specifically in the project management field due to their experiences? For example, knowledge of military systems and procedures related to the military contracts, even if they have the same amount of project management experience and other equal qualifications.
Matt, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah. I was going to say, no, it's really going to depend on the particular position because our project management roles span over pretty much every different type of directorate and opportunity. So there are going to be some project management positions that is going to favor, a military or service member, but there are going to be other ones that don't. There's going to be other, a lot of stuff that we do here at Northrop, you may not actually be able to get on the military side of the house. It's going to be a lot of civilian type of work, a lot of industry types of processes, tools and procedures and those kind of things. So it's really going to depend on the position. It's really going to be the basic qualifications of what the requisitions need is going to be based where the advantage is, but they kind of span over all different types of roles different programs, different positions, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So I do want to just start to close off these questions with for either Matt, Brian, or Ish, if you want to jump in. So if someone here in this audience applied to Northrop Grumman tomorrow, what is sort of that one thing you want them to walk away with from this session knowing? Something that isn't written, anywhere in a job description or on your website. What's kind of that nugget of information you want to pass on to them?
As I said, it's about tailoring that resume. Tailor that resume, then, send Matt, myself, or Ish the requisition number, like we said, that easy button, right? But more importantly, be persistent, okay? Because I'm telling you, like that job that was opened up in 6 days, we had 1,000 people apply. So just know if you don't get selected, be persistent. And you can apply to as many jobs as you want, and it doesn't hurt you. Okay. So if it doesn't work out the first time around, know that yes, you met the BQs. Again, make sure you're qualified. But if you're qualified, you didn't get selected, don't, don't let that hurt you, or don't, take it personally, because there's a lot of qualified people that do apply. Just be persistent.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. So I do want to point to the resources you all shared in the chat for individuals to tap into. I know you mentioned there's a webinar later this afternoon as well. And you know what? Let's pass it off to Terry for this final question. So Terry asks, I've applied to Operation Impact and have yet to hear back. Could someone, would this be relevant, Matt or Brian, to like how you're working with applicants?
I'll connect.
Well, you got the expert Ish on.
Yeah, I'll connect with Terry. Yep.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Ish. Yeah, so I think that'll just wrap up these questions. Daniel, I know you have a question in the chat. Feel free to connect with us. But I do want to point it over to Linda to share some next steps, what you can expect after this session. And again, definitely tap into those links in the chat shared by Brian and Matt. Great resources here. Most of all, just want to thank you all for your time and lending your expertise. Really great information.
Yeah.
I'll answer Daniel really quick.
Okay.
I would go 60, 90 days before getting out. I'd start applying at least. Yeah.
And Daniel, if you're still active duty, consider SkillBridge as well. Okay, I know that's something we didn't really talk about today. But certainly anyone still on active duty or who qualifies for SkillBridge, that should be one of the first things you should be looking into.
Yes.
Awesome.
Find out more later today.
Thank you so much, Ish, Brian, and Matt. This was really an amazing presentation and so informative. And I do want to just reiterate that we're going to be sending the recording to everybody later this afternoon. I'll also include the link to your afternoon webinar. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out. But thank you so much. This was really great. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Look forward to connecting.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.